The Drum Candy podcast is brought to you by Drum Factory Direct.
Welcome into episode 10 of season 3 of the Drum Candy podcast. This is your host, Mike Dawson, coming to you from Drum Factory Direct in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. This week's guest is currently the manager of the drum department at Berklee College of Music. He's also a multi-award-winning session drummer in Boston. So in this episode, we talk about the gigging world, the session world, his role at Berklee, and we get super nerdy and dive into a snare drum shootout. This time we are checking out 4 different 6.5x14 Ludwig-Style metal drums. And by Ludwig-Style, I mean they have a center bead and they have rolled edges. And the 4 drums are, let's see, I'm not gonna tell you the order because it's random. It's a blindfold test with Jonathan, but two of them are aluminum, one of them is chrome plated, one of them is a 6 lug that I believe is powder coated or it's like raw aluminum. And then the other 2, one of them is black nickel over brass, and then the 4th one is a stainless steel. So we just have fun listening to them in 3 different tunings, high, medium, and low. And then Jonathan and I just kind of nerd out on some drums. So let's get to the interview with Jonathan, and then towards the end of the episode, we dig into 4 different metal snare drums. Yeah, we were saying before we started, last time I saw you were in New York for a gig or something, a showcase.
Yeah.
I don't know how many years ago that was, but it was a minute.
Definitely prior to the pandemic, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think we just kind of met. I think I vaguely remember it was a place we got a beer and like a hamburger or something like that.
Yeah, Lower East Side maybe.
Yeah. And yeah, it's so crazy that we've all had numerous transitions and new gigs since then. So Really cool to be able to speak to you on this. Definitely been a fan of the podcast for sure.
Oh, cool. Awesome. So has the live gigging thing changed since then? You know, like you were on the road a little bit. I think you were down with an artist who was playing at like the pianos or somewhere down the Lower East Side. Is that stuff still happening?
Yeah, I was just did a gig at Mercury Lounge, I think last weekend or the weekend before. You know, it took definitely a dip, and it certainly hasn't. I feel like it's back to an extent, but I feel like I've since then pushed harder to do more studio work. So if the live stuff comes along, it's generally not like I kind of see what it is, see if the logistics and the money are all worth the travel and that kind of thing. And not that I don't want to do it. I just found that I've gotten so much studio work since then that I don't need to go back and forth or get in the road as much as I did before. So it was just a restructuring of priorities and finding a better balance. I think the pandemic certainly helped that, but from just seeing what friends are doing and stuff like that, and being in Boston and working at Berklee, I certainly see that gigs seem to be, just as busy as they were before. Unfortunately, what I have found in Boston is a lot of the venues that would host more of a local music scene have since moved on, and they couldn't sort of navigate through the pandemic. And in place, we're finding that a lot of huge venues are going up in the city, 2,500 to 5,000 capacity venues, which are great because it brings a lot of, great acts to the city. But the smaller clubs were unable to sustain. So it's getting a little harder for, bands to find places to play. But I think everybody finds some sort of solution. The venues that weren't necessarily venues before have become venues, and I think people are always trying to make the best of it.
I moved to Pittsburgh a couple of years ago and started working in the clubs around here, and all the gigs are early. Like no one's doing the 10 to 2s anymore. It's like 8 to 11 or something like that. Is that the same?
Definitely have noticed that, now when somebody's like, all right, we got to be there at 5 and we'll hit at 8:45. I was like, no, is that what time the show starts? And then we're on at 10. It's like, no, we'll be on at 8:45. So, which I have no problems with that at all. And I feel like a lot more people are inclined to come out on a Tuesday night, and they're like, oh, that's all right, I'll be home by 10 kind of thing. So definitely have noticed earlier show schedules, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
And so Pittsburgh's got a great scene.
Yeah, I mean, there's music everywhere. It's just in different little pockets,
Yeah. Is that still Opus? Is that still a booking agency there? Or I feel like that was
any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I get a call and I just show up and play.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome.
So what's the session scene like in Boston? Said you were doing a lot of studio work.
Yeah, it's not so much of a session town, quote unquote town, like a Nashville or an LA would be, but there's a lot of music coming out of the city, and they need people to play on those records and stuff like that. I'm in a cool situation because I work alongside a producer who does a lot of in the box beat making, but has found that he really likes live drums on a lot of his records and artists that he works with. So I get an insane amount of work from the amount of work that he's bringing in as well. So yeah, I think I found a little pocket that works for me, but I think I had to put myself out there for many, many years in the city in order to, let people know this is what I'm doing. And I just sort of found this really cool situation. We got the studio, a producer that works on a lot of records. I have a lot of artists that come to me that want drums, and it all sort of, works out of this studio in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So, but I feel like there are a lot of people here who play with different artists and play on a lot of records or do stuff in the studio, but I still don't think anybody really calls it a session town kind of thing. I think it's really a band town. I think people like to have bands and official members of their projects here. So, when you have that conversation about, oh yeah, you just pay me and I go in and I'll do your record and I don't take any of your promo photos with you, that kind of thing. I think that conversation is getting easier and easier, but in the past, it was kind of like, I don't know what, I don't know what you mean by session player. And now it seems very much a popular thing here for people to be hired out to play a certain role on these projects, which is cool because, you used to have to go to New York or you have to fly out to LA or try to get your name in Nashville or something like that. Now it doesn't feel like you have to go anywhere.
Mm-hmm. Do you end up getting called to do like shows with these acts as well after the fact?
Yes. So the cool thing is, what I always do is if I'm working with a new artist and we do their record and they're like, oh, I'm going to go out in support of this, I always throw out my name and say, hey, listen, like I'm available to do the live aspect. And that's a great sort of, dovetail off of the session because it's like, oh, you obviously know these songs very well because we just did a whole record on them. And then they're like, oh, do you want to use the guitarist that was on this record? Do you want to use the bassist that was on this record? So a lot of times they go, well, you were all the players that worked on this record. Are any of you interested in, touring in support of it? And so it's nice to be able to do that. And I think that a lot of the people here want both of those aspects, whereas some people like, no, I just want to do the studio. I'm happy to do the record and, go find your players. But I like that balance. I like to know that if the record is really cool and it has some legs and feels like it'd be a fun project to play live, absolutely put my name out there. And I think that takes the pressure off of the artist to be like, okay, now I have to find a band to play this stuff. I think when all is said and done, if I liked it and they liked it and we had a good vibe, you may find that it's an easy conversation to have afterwards and say, hey, do you want to do some shows off of this?
How do you navigate the business side of it? Is that upfront? Like, do you want me to play shows? Well, unfortunately, I need this much money. Or, I mean, how does that happen quickly?
It always, and I've been doing this for so many years. That conversation is always so uncomfortable for me because I just love doing it as an art form and being part of the creative process. But I think, later in my life, I realized things are very expensive and having a, family is very expensive. And the city is very expensive in general. So I feel like you kind of have to play it by ear. If you know that this artist that you're working with has backing from a label or a management company, that conversation's a little easier because it's not something that's coming directly out of their, pocket kind of thing. So I feel like it's every situation is slightly different. I also work at Berklee, so it's a little bit easier for me to say, yeah, I could take a hit financially going out on the road because I really do believe in this artist and the music. And I have this other piece that sort of, is a safety net. Whereas if this was the only thing I was doing, it would be a hard conversation to have. Be like, I need to make this much money. I'm also at the point in my career, not in a bragging way, but more like I don't want to sleep on a random person's floor when I go out on the road or sleep in the car kind of thing. I did that for many years, through Europe and across the United States. So it would be nice if, there was logistics that were sort of like figured out prior to this. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like I need money for food or any of that stuff. But, if there's hotels or places to stay and transportation's covered, like those little things are super helpful. So I think you have to really feel out what kind of finances this artist has. And then sometimes you just have to be like, I can't do it for free and I'm not going to leave my job for 2 weeks to do this because I really believe in you. It's just not feasible. And I think more and more people these days sort of understand that like it's expensive. It's expensive. And they just spent $10, $15, $20,000 making the record. So there may not be a huge budget after that. So I think it's not a hard conversation, but it's definitely something that needs to be talked about. And happy to go to New York or Connecticut or throughout New England and tour around there. It's easy. You can make it work. But if the person's like, oh, we're going to do the Midwest and the West Coast, then yeah, there's some sort of financial conversation that does need to happen. But if it's a good vibe and there's transparency and honesty there, it's a normal conversation. Everybody needs money to survive kind of thing.
Let's talk about the session work itself. Are you having to like adapt the way you play the drums to fit with modern production? I assume there's probably a lot of like loops and stuff you're replacing or layering on top of. Like, what are you doing to these tracks?
Yes, so that's a great question. I have this conversation. I actually just did a clinic with Adam Marcello in Amsterdam a couple weeks ago, and we had this conversation. And I was talking to the students about how every time the producer calls me, he's like, yeah, I got a project for us to work on. We got to knock out 10, 15 songs in the studio and come in and we'll take a listen to them. And I'll come in and I'll listen to the drums that, he already put on the tracks. I'm like, what do you need me for? These are awesome. Like, this sounds perfect. And so like, I sort of watch and get this feeling like, am I like witnessing do I need to go look for a different job kind of thing? And what I've found is as brilliant as these programs are, as great as these sounds in the computer are, they can't quite figure out the imperfections of a human, and so when you have a track that's got great drum sounds on it and the song's going along and you want it to come up to that next level, you can't just raise the volume of the MIDI drums or the MIDI beats that you're working on. Like, you need something else to bring it to that next level to raise the energy in the song. And what we've found is if the computer drums are starting the track and then the live drums go on top of that, there is this moment of excitement that comes out. And it's, even if I'm playing the same part that's already on the record or that's already been created, there is a sense of something getting bigger or something having more energy. And I found that there's no shortage of work. I mean, there is a need for that imperfection, that human side of making music. Otherwise, and I think Questlove talked about this too, it was like, music's not human anymore. There's nothing fun listening to a song that's like so perfectly produced and there's no flaws in it. Like at some point we're so ingrained with that currently that it's nice to hear, oh, that something changed in the song. It sounds like the hi-hat's not as robotic anymore. It sounds like that snare has a live feel to it, and that's because it was done, live. So I think even with AI and all that technology and stuff like that, I feel like people are starting to come around to maybe we still need still need to appreciate the fact that like it's still humans making the music, so there still needs to be humans incorporated in the music. And I think luckily I work with a producer who still very much believes in that process, and we'll play a song for an artist, and I've had times where he didn't tell the artist that he was bringing in me to do live drums, and we'll go in the studio and she's like, I noticed that I'm paying for Jonathan, or I got billed for Jonathan, and I don't know why we need a drummer. And what he'll do is we'll sit down and he'll be like, okay, here's your song as I created, and they'll be listening to it. And he goes, okay, here's the song when we added the drums. And their expression is so like, they can sense like, wow, the song came up. It didn't change. The parts weren't any different. I didn't hear Jonathan's drums. It was all blended in together, but the energy of the song, the moments of dynamics that come and go throughout the song because of that human element are significant. And then he'll mute me and he'll play it again and be like, the song kind of lives here, and then when you add those extra pieces, and it has to be done thoughtfully, the song does do that. And I think that more and more artists are coming around to the fact that like, it is important to have some human element to the music, because at its base level, they're the human that's still creating it. So, you still need humans to be a part of it from a instrumental point of view, I think. Well, hopefully, and next year I could be completely phased out of a career.
No, let's hope not. So is it like, are you going for takes at this point, or are you just kind of coming up with ideas and going for playlists so they can pick and choose what they use?
Yeah, I mean, that's an awesome question. It's like the days of me, doing a full take of a song in the studio seem like not so much anymore. I mean, you find that like a basic day of process is, the producer will be like, hey, listen, I have 15 songs we need to do, and we have 4 hours to do them, and I need your drums on all of them. And the songs that I've never heard before, until we pull them up in the studio. So what ends up happening is things are cut up, and that's the great thing about the computer. So basically, I'll go in, we'll set up the drums, get the sounds or whatever, and then he'll be like, okay, here's the song. And he'll play it, and he'll go, play what you think while I'll hit record, play what you think goes along with this. It'll be flubs and stuff like that. And he goes, okay, that sounds great. I really like that part. Let me punch you in here. Play that. Give me a fill so we have a transition into the next section. Okay, now on this one, just give me some hi-hat. Okay, do this. So it really is deconstructed because you need it to happen very quickly. And if I had to play full takes of songs with all of the parts and the structures of the song on a song that I've never heard, it's going to take a while for me to remember, okay, this is how the verse goes. This is the chorus. This is the bridge section. Okay, now I got to get a flawless take in order for them to get that. And I have to do this for 14 more songs in a 4-hour period. In a perfect world and in unlimited time, yeah, I probably would want that, because then it has a more natural, vibe to it. But these days, it's like I want something very specific on the snare drum, and you trying to play that while you're doing the hi-hat and while you're doing your kick pattern, when you've just heard this song 5 minutes ago, it's not good. It's going to take a bit, and play it to a click track, kind of thing. So what you find is, give me the kick and the snare. Now let's add the hi-hat. Or, I mean, even I saw a video on the Alicia Keys, This Girl's on Fire. I mean, the guy was down on the floor using a mallet, for the bass drum. And it was like, did he not play it as a drummer? No, he wanted the sound, and he wanted it to sound the way he wanted it. So he had to go down and play with a mallet and on his knees and play the kick part that you would generally play with your foot, and he got the sound that I wanted. And that's sort of the cool part of the studio, is that you're deconstructing the song and you're coming up with the perfect way to record it. And then obviously live, you need to, learn to play those parts, and play them live. But yeah, I think that, and working at Berklee, I feel like a lot of students that I talk to, I feel like a lot of them you tell them that story and they're like, oh, so you're not playing the drums on the, the song kind of. It's almost like it's offensive if you can't do it. And it's like, it's the wrong way of thinking about it. You're being asked to come up with something specific, and it may not be like the way that you think it's supposed to, happen. But I still have those sessions in which all 4 or 5 members of the band are in the room, and we all have to go at the same time. And then at the end of the take, everyone's like, well, I had a bunch of clams on the second verse. And it's like, did the drummer get its take? Because once the drummer gets the take, then we can all just go back in and punch in after that. So, that's how I remember recording. I mean, I had days where I'm older, but I remember recording to tape and being like, well, you kind of were like, well, it wasn't miserable, so let's just go with that one, kind of thing. And I feel like that's unfortunately the part that doesn't happen as much anymore. But you follow the way the trends are happening, and I don't feel any less of a drummer because I was, on the floor. The sound that we needed just happened to be me playing my sticks on the drum throne, like. That was what sounded good for the song. So, I played on the drum throne, and you had to mic up the drum throne. So I like that creative aspect of it.
What is your gear that you take for one of these kind of marathon sessions?
So, Ludwig came out with the new Sonic kit. And I was very fortunate to be a part of the marketing campaign for that. And so they were like, hey, we came up with the digital oyster wrap that was really cool. And I didn't have any more space in my house. And I used to always bring my drums to the studio, back and forth to the studio. I said, you know what? I'm going to leave this kit here. And we tuned it up, and that's the house kit at the studio. It's one of the most incredibly versatile drum sets that I think the studio has ever had. So that's there. And then, just a whole bunch of Zildjian cymbals that I've donated, or Zildjian donated to the studio. And they have a good, 10, 12 snares there. There's I give them the other thing is, it's like my home studio. So it's almost like I'm going to just leave all this stuff here and anybody can use it. I'm totally cool with that. But that way I don't have to bring anything. So there's a Black Beauty there. There's some wooden Ludwig snares there. I think there's a piccolo. If I need something very specific, like, hey, listen, for this record, we're going to, we want a really deep sounding snare or something like that. But the caveat to that is, what you found is, like I said, they have 15 songs, they have 20 songs, and they have a 4 to 6 hour block to get all the drums for them. The computers, this is where they're very helpful. It's because, hit the snare on all 12 or 15 of those songs, and we'll adjust the sound accordingly, to what we want, kind of thing. Certainly detuning, certainly cranking it, making it really tight, at least having 2 snares there for different sounds. cymbals get changed out a bunch, but like I said, it's in a studio, so it's almost like you can have extra stuff on the drum set already mic'd up and ready to go. But there's certainly times where the producer's like, I want some really dirty sounding hats on this. So then we have to change out, the hats. But for the most part, it's a regular 4-piece kit. Maybe 5 cymbals up there, 2 snares. And if they want something really specific, you can make adjustments there. But, the days of bringing 5 different snare drums to a studio session just don't feel like people have the time, to do that, which is sad but I'm very fortunate that I got to do it at one point, now it's the same thing. I got my master's in photography. And, as an undergrad, I was working in the dark room and had to, use all the chemical baths to develop my film and stuff like that. Now I can do everything on my iPhone, but I got to experience it. So I know how it works. So I'm really glad that I got to experience what it was like to change out your snare drum, with what this song needed, or switch out a kick drum here and there, change cymbals. And now you find that the technology and the software is so good that, yeah, I can hit the same snare on all 15 songs and we can adjust it accordingly. I think when you go do those records that you go away for a week and it's a getaway recording session, you can be a little more lean, a little more flexible, and bring different things and try different things. And I think that's really fun. But my world consists of getting out of work at Berklee at 5 and then doing a 5-hour session a few times a week, at the studio. So sometimes it's convenience is better to just have the drums set up as there is and go from there.
Do you have to go with like drier, deader sounds because of the technology, knowing that like samples are going to be layered on or whatever might happen? Do you do a live, wide open drum sound ever anymore?
Well, the cool thing about this space is a very, very open room. So they can it's a huge, huge space. So, there are mics spread out throughout the live area. So they can get different sounds. If they want to use, something from a mic that's 40 feet away, they can do that. I tend to just have like a G2, Evans G2 on mostly everything, which is pretty, across the board, just a good versatile snare head. I've certainly used the HD dry stuff on some sessions, but the most that happens is they'll change out mics, and say we want something different on this snare sound, and they'll do it from a miking standpoint, rather than me changing anything on my end, kind of thing.
Interesting. Cool. What is your role at Berklee?
So I am I sort of manage and oversee the percussion department. So somebody that kind of deals with the day-to-day operations of the school. So all the students are sort of under my watch. Faculty, when visiting artists come in, I kind of make sure that that's all sort of like handled. But I also do all of the social media, all the graphic design for the department. I do all the photography. So because it's, we have like 600 kids. So there's 2 chairs of the department who do chair, political stuff and some administration stuff. And then you need somebody to kind of like basically make sure the department is running smoothly, day in and day out, making sure that the semesters are running smoothly. So it's pretty cool because I get to have my hands in a lot of different aspects. And then the cool thing is like, I'm sort of that, you get a lot of older people here, got a lot of students here. So I sort of fall in this middle age bracket in which I'm a good resource for students who are going to graduate soon and want to know how to get their careers off the ground. So I'm not that far removed from, I could be their 10, 15 year plan kind of thing, which is great because then so I sort of fall as like this sort of unofficial advisor to a lot of students who kind of want to know talk about endorsements, talk about touring, talk about studio work, talk about how to get your name out there, how to do social media stuff. So it's a perfect position for me because I get to utilize a lot of different aspects of my skill sets and experience a lot of things that maybe a faculty member wouldn't, because they're literally just here to teach lessons and classes and stuff like that. So that's my role here at Berklee.
How do you manage the social media side of it? Do you do a batch stuff out, or is it daily for you there?
For here, I try to do, obviously there's a lot of content going on. We try to really capture what the students are doing here, day in and day out. But on the flip side of that, there are areas that we like to focus on. So, for instance, our percussion department is made up of drum sets, mallet players, orchestral players, hand percussionists, steel pan players, West African, instruments and world music. So what we found is there's no shortage of drum set players. They are here. They're always going to be here. It's like 80% drum set players. Where we like to focus our attention is bring visibility to the other instruments in order to try and bring visibility around the world to people who are like, oh, what can I study in the department, at Berklee? And you also find that it's unfortunate, but a lot of the areas that we have low population or low enrollment are areas in which the instruments or that music is coming from areas that have less opportunity to come to Berklee and pay for, how much it costs to come to Berklee. So we really try to bring visibility to, the world music side of things, the mallet side of things, and to entice more people to come here and hope that more opportunities for scholarship, happen, and more opportunities to bring these students here on other means. So you may find when you look at the pages, you may find like, oh, there's not a whole lot of drum set stuff going on, but there's a reason behind. There's a methodology. It's because we want to highlight that, we only have 8 steel pan players here. We would love to have more steel pan players here. So, there's a lot of conversations that say, okay, what's enrollment like? Here's where we're lacking. Here's where we want to bring visibility. But because I have the photography degree, I can really capture students in their element. And so, it works out, for me to be able to utilize that skill set. And so if it's not a daily thing, also it's Berklee. So you have to share what else is going on in the college and stuff like that. But yeah, day in, day out of what happens at Berklee, if there's events happening or if there's visiting artists that we have coming in. I mean, we just had the Tito Puente 100, the Mambo Kings were here last week, the 100th birthday of Tito Puente. So we even had Gilberto Santa Rosa come here, and he's a mega 9, 6, 8, 10 time Grammy winning singer, and he came and he sat in a classroom with 15 students. And I mean, it's like sometimes very surreal who's on campus at any given point.
Mm-hmm. So you're tasked to just kind of document these things,
And
passively,
not,
like just kind of walk in and this is what's happening, or you plan it out ahead of time.
Some things are planned. Some things I capture a moment of cool things happening that wasn't planned out. A lot of times it's fun to just, at the end of the day. So say from 3 to 5, I kind of walk between the 2 buildings and see what's happening and get some content there. But of course I know when some of these people are here and I can plan accordingly. And a lot of times I have access to them prior to it getting, crazy. Then there's times where there's like no indication that this person was on campus, and all of a sudden you need to be quick and be like, tell them who you are. You're not just like this person that's running up to them and say, I work for the percussion department. Here's my, blah, blah. I'd love to take a picture to kind of show. And most people are, I mean, when you get to a certain point, you have to understand that that's a way of life. Some people don't love it. Some people are completely okay with it. But yeah, I mean, there was a point. I mean, this one I didn't know. This was really interesting, but I found out the next day that like Ringo Starr was in the room next to where I was doing getting some sort of like award kind of thing. But because he's Ringo Starr, they didn't let anybody at the college know that he was there because all of Boston would have shut down kind of thing. Yeah. But like they posted a picture of where he was and when it happened. And I'm like, I walked by that room. You're telling me that Ringo Starr was in that room not that I could have run in and taken a picture, but some of that stuff tends to happen, and it's, sometimes you get lucky and I've been here for almost 10 years and I've certainly, I've walked by a room and there's Omar Hakim talking with Greg Fillinganes and it's like, can I take a picture? Can I take a picture? Can I take a picture with both of you kind of thing? And also take a picture and promote the department. And there'd be no students there because, the students sometimes don't know who these old people are that literally redefined the entire music industry.
Do you still find time to practice? It sounds like your life is pretty full.
I wish I had more time to do that. What I find is I find pockets of time to kind of go in and try things on my own, work on things that I feel like maybe I went into a session and I was like, I should have done this better kind of thing. I find those moments. But what I find is a lot of my practice is preparing for something that I have coming up, in which case a lot of times somebody sends me something like, can you record on this? And I'll hear what they want and be like, I know that I'm going to need to work on that before I go into the studio, or go on a live show. So I find that like a lot of my practice is based on work that's coming my way and that I know that I'm going to need to work on that because it may not be something of a natural, like, feeling that I could just go up and wing it and I would be fine, So I do find that a lot of my practice is based on stuff that's coming in and that I need to work on it. But, at some point this is day in and day out. I feel like that when I do have those moments of time off that I could spend practicing, I feel like I try to be a normal human, right. And, and see friends or, obviously spend time with my daughter as much as possible. So, I really do find that like it's, at lunchtime at Berklee, if I don't have anything to do, I'll go in a room and try different things out and listen to cymbals that I haven't played, maybe, or snare drums that I want to hear how they sound. And, or if, I watch something on social media that I really liked, I'll go in and say, oh, that was pretty cool. Let me go try that. So there's always playing, which is in a form getting better at what you're doing. But yeah, I wish there was more time to do a lot of things.
I hear you. Well, you want to listen to some snare drums?
Absolutely.
All right.
It's my favorite thing to do.
I guess you must have taken a picture of a Superphonic or something. For some reason, I associate you with 6 snap by 14 metal snare drum.
I love that. All those, the Ludwig, like copper phonic or the raw brass. I mean, I use those Superphonic. I use those in the studio all the time.
Okay. So what I did was I grabbed 4 Ludwig-Style 6 snap by 14 metal drums. One is chrome over aluminum. It's Superphonic 10 lug. One is powder coated over aluminum 6 lug. Sick. That matches a maple. Trash talk. One is a chromed stainless steel tie. And then the fourth one is black nickel over brass with solid brass hoops. Matches a maple. So this isn't like a can you guess the drum kind of thing. It's more like let's listen to it, assess what we think we like or whatever,
Yeah.
and then kind of rank our favorites by the end of it,
Okay.
and then we'll reveal what it was. So I've got two versions.
Very excited.
All right. So I'm going to share.
That
my
would be
screen.
really funny to say. Could you name that snare drum? I mean, I feel like I nerd out about snare drums a lot, but I don't know quite do that.
Yeah, they're all kind of I do these often. I did one with Mike Johnston where it was shallow metal drums of different types. I did one with Carter McLean where it was maple drums of different construction.
Awesome.
And it was super fun, and we kind of always get to the conclusion like you're talking about small differences, like tiny little differences, but it's still fun.
Of course.
So I'm going to share. Hopefully you can see this and hear it. So this is our first drum. I have no idea what it is. I don't remember. I did these over the weekend. So can you see this?
It's all like
it's blurred out. Yeah.
Blurred out. Yeah.
Okay. Now can you hear it?
Yes.
Okay, so we did three. Let me give you the background. Three different tunings. Okay. The bottom heads were all identical, F sharp, fourth octave, so pretty tight but not super cranked. And then I did like a high tuning, so the drum fundamental note was G sharp, and then I took it down a whole step to F sharp and then to E. So you get three identical tunings from each drum, and I play the same John Bonham groove or something. I don't remember what I played. So here we go. This is our first drum, which I labeled as YRIYIEW.
Perfect.
Right. So here we go. All right, that's our first drum. Any thoughts?
The tighter version was really nice. But I just did a record with that third tuning, something very similar to that third tuning, and it was super cool. What we could do with that sound in the once it was in the computer. But that had a great ring to it. You didn't tell me which one's the order of them, right?
No, I don't know what they are. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
We're going to reveal after the fact, so that's number one.
Okay. Yeah, that was beautiful.
What drum did you use on the session for that sound?
That was the Copperphonic.
Okay.
It loosened up. You said none of the bottom heads changed on any of these, right?
The wires, everything was the same, just the batter head.
Yeah. Okay, so we did. I always crank the bottom head. It kind of just leave it and then adjust, like you said, the batter side. But I did let the strainer wires. I loosened them up a little bit to do that for the session, and then the head was pretty loose. And did a stand on, I stood on the head, really, really like loosened up the batter head. But it was a very, very cool sound, and it was very similar to what I just heard on that. So I'm super interested to know what snare that was.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let's go to another one. We can get some kind of comparison here. This one, let me open it up. This one I labeled UOIRDF. All right, and here it goes. All right, that's number 2.
I'm making a like a favorite sound for each drum. That second tuning on that drum, that was beautiful. I can't wait to find out what that was.
Okay, cool. Now, if you had to pick one of those two, would you pick one over the other, or they just give you
the actual snare?
Yeah, the drum itself.
Yeah, I mean, I love the tight sound because I work on a lot of hip hop, so that tight sound is great. But the warmth and the tone of that second tuning of that second drum, I mean, I immediately grabbed a piece of paper because I want to know what that was. So far, that snare, whatever that second tuning was on that snare, is so far the winner.
All right, let's go to the third one then. This one I labeled GHKHGK.
All right.
Can't tell. I just randomly hit keys on the keyboard. All right, here we go. Drum number 3. right. That's number 3.
That one was interesting. They're all 6.5, right?
Yep.
That first tuning on that one was very thin sounding. And I'm just curious what because it almost felt like it wouldn't have been a 6.5, because that even when you're got the tight tuning on the first 2, you can still feel the body, of that snare. But that one's different, so that might be obviously interested, but I'm wondering if that was the material, kind of thing that gave it that. But I don't know which one yet. It was very fat. The third one was very fat sounding, which was super cool. But I put a question mark by that one.
Okay.
All right, fourth.
All right, fourth one. This is our last drum. Last but not least, I labeled this one DAG SDG. For those of you playing along, that's for my for my reference when I'm dropping in the files. All right, last drum.
That's cool.
There we go. That's all right. 4 drums.
You said one of the drums was a 6 slug?
Yeah. One of them was it was basically like an acrylite style shell, but 6 slug.
I wonder if that was okay. All right. I have some thoughts.
Okay.
Right. I'm ready to figure this out. Okay, now do you get to reveal?
Yeah, which one do you want to start with?
I want to know what that second drum was.
Okay, that was.
And I don't have the letters marked down.
UOIRDF. Oh man. You know what? I'm not surprised that this was your favorite. Superphonic.
Ah, yes.
An old
absolutely.
70s
Yeah, that thing is. Look at all that wear and tear. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That second sound was flawless to me.
Just for reference, that was right here.
That's as perfect as you get. So good.
Yep.
I mean, it's no reason why it's the most recorded drum in history.
Yeah, so anyone playing along, that was tuned to a fundamental of F sharp. Bottom head was F sharp, and then whatever the top head needed to be to get the whole drum to be an F sharp.
That was awesome. That's my winner so far, but I want to see. I got to see what the third drum is.
The third drum.
Yeah.
That was the one you thought was like thin sounding?
Yeah, there's consistency across the board with all of them. That one, right off the rip, something seemed different. I'm wondering what it was.
Well, you probably won't be surprised. It is steel.
Okay.
It's a steel shell, which probably makes it. I've made a note that it had sounded kind of scooped, like a lot of highs and a lot of lows, but not much mids.
And this is which drum?
It's a Thai stainless steel.
Okay.
I think it's a 1 millimeter shell, maybe a 1.5. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Right.
Steel is a brighter sounding drum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's check out that first tuning again.
Yeah, definitely.
Sounds like Chad Smith, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
But his drum is what? He's got a 5.5.
Yeah.
5. So I mean, I did say it sounded like it was a less, maybe around the 5. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, I had a check mark on the first sound of the first drum.
That was the Y drum. Ooh, this is one of my favorites. This is the brass, black nickel brass with solid brass hoops. It's the only one that has solid brass hoops, which does make a difference. It's heavier than all the other drums.
Absolutely.
So the first
That's
tuning,
good patina too.
Yeah, that's a Black Ugly series, which they made like 50, and then they'll never make them again. They said.
So cool.
Yeah,
well, you got one. Yeah, that's a good sound. Do you have UV1s on the top there?
G2 on everything.
Oh, those are G2. Okay.
Yep.
I'm like looking as if I can look over the. That's a good sounding drum.
Which is weird because this drum I routinely use for the lower, fatter thing. Throw a wallet on it.
That has a nice ring for the tightest tuning. All right, so on the fourth one, I love the first and third tuning. Let's do, because we haven't done a third fat loose tuning yet. So what's the fourth drum on that one?
Okay, that is the 6-lug aluminum. So
which drum is it?
Masters of Maple Trash Talk.
Okay.
This was a drum that they got in a lot of trouble with because Dave Grohl was using it and DW wasn't too happy about that.
Dave Grohl can do whatever he wants.
Exactly. Just so you wanted to hear the third.
Yeah. That's cool. That's a good sound drum. That's cool. That's a good sound. First of all, I just want to say that Ludwig needs to be made aware of the fact that I was able to pick out the Ludwig sound off of 4 snare drums.
With very similar shells, yeah. With
very similar shells. So, my goodness, I'm very happy right now. Those are very cool. Very cool. That was fun.
So yeah, what was cool about your favorites, we can kind of take the steel drum out. Unfortunately, that was maybe the one that wouldn't make the cut. But if you're going to take 3 drums, you've got the brass for the tight, you've got the superphonic for the middle, and you've got the 6-lug for the low. Yeah, that was really cool. And I mean, they're all. I mean, I would use each of those, in the studio. I mean, they all are incredibly good sounding, snare drums. I tend to really focus on the highest tuning, the tightest tuning because of the music. I do a lot of pop, songs. I do a lot of hip hop, which requires that, really like, no decay, not a whole lot of decay, just really like punchy, get in and get out sound. So,
very interesting to hear. And of course, in my world, like I'm very loyal to Ludwig, so I have a lot of snare drums. So it's really great to hear how those other sounds go. But that first snare drum, that tight tuning on that first snare drum, definitely caught my ear. I thought that was a great sound. And 6.5 is tough because and especially a 6 lug is tough too, because you can only crank it. You can only crank it so much. I have a really beautiful 70s, maybe late 60s with the Black Oyster Ludwig, and the snare that came with it is a 6 lug, and I found that I could only bring that around for gigs that didn't require the drum to be cranked too much. It just could never get it tight enough to where I wanted it. Just kind of always lived in an area, which is great for some things, but the snare drum that I keep in my bag ready to go, the drums that are ready to go for no matter what the gig is, doesn't matter. I have a kit for that, a cymbal bag that has that in a snare, and that's the 5.5 by 14 Black Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
That just goes with me, wherever, no matter what. And we didn't even go into cymbals, but it's all K dark stuff with a 21-inch sweet ride, mm-hmm. and some new beats on the hi-hats. But that snare drum, I feel like, is this perfect drum that you can loosen it up enough as much as you want. You can tighten it down as much as you want, and it just got a good overall, sound. So, really interesting to break down the 6.5 stuff, because they can be wonky. They can, but great. You picked a great beat to really to highlight them.
Well, thank you for playing along, and we're at the end of the hour. So how can people find you to follow what you're doing and keep in touch?
Across all social media, it's JMU Drums at JMU Drums for mostly Instagram. I feel like I'm on most of the time. So that's Jonathan Matthew Ulman Drums on Instagram, social, Facebook, and all that stuff. But yeah, if anybody has any questions or anything, I love talking about this stuff. Obviously, I can go well over an hour talking about it. But it was really great to talk to you, Mike. I really appreciate you bringing me on. All right, we've come to the end of the episode. That means it's time for me to ask you to like and to share and to subscribe and to write us a review and to give us a 5-star rating. I appreciate all of you and everyone who has been supporting the show. It definitely gives me life to keep it going. But we would love this show to spread even further. So share it with your drummer friends, share it with your bass player friends. And as always, you can reach me at drumcandypodcast@gmail.com. Until next week, have fun messing around with your drums, go practice, and see you then.